Hello, Malene. I hope I'm saying your name right. Malene? Or is it Maylene? I'm guessing Malene. Again, sorry if I said it wrong. And your topic, thank you very much, was releasing shame and guilt. So I think we can all, I'm just going to walk around in the sunroom here in red. I'll try to stay closer to the light. There we go. So, releasing shame and guilt. Well, why wouldn't we? Right? We can all relate to it, obviously. You can't be a human being on this world without feeling shame or guilt. I mean, first of all, our society is built on it, so it's built on it, it's reinforced by the system, it's reinforced by the people in the system, it's reinforced by the family, and it's reinforced by ourselves, by this thing here, the noggin. So there's not a human alive who hasn't or won't feel shame or guilt. And so releasing it, well, really comes down to a choice like everything else. It always does. Sometimes we just feel it's ready and we just do it, and sometimes we got to really work our way up to it. You know, we have different ways. When we're ready, we're ready. So you just have to flow with what feels right for you. And if shame and guilt, now I'm going to tell you a story. So this is about short-term shame and guilt, not shame and guilt the kind that can last for years and years and years and years. But I think this will illustrate my point. When I was a little boy, guessing, I don't know, 6, I have no idea. 6, 7, somewhere around there, I discovered I had a talent. And the talent was stealing. I had stole up to that point. This all took place in 1 year. So, on the way to school, it was a bit of a trek, several buses, and so there were variety stores and things all along the way. Places that had goodies. And not having any money, and eventually, and kind of, I wouldn't say peer pressure, but peer influence, because all the kids, you know, at my school were stealing. I shouldn't say all the kids, but a lot. It was very common. So between that and not having any money and the temptation, whatever happened, I don't remember exactly how or when I stole the first thing, but I'm sure it was a goodie. And so I started taking a few things, and I became, I just found I was a natural at it. I think because of how badly I didn't want to get caught. So I really planned things out and observed and just, you know, like the jewel thief in the Pink Panther movie, scoping the place out. But anyways, and I remember where I really, I guess you could say, came into my own. We used to have a department store way back in the day in Canada called Woolworths, which is really one of the early predecessors of the Walmarts. And there was an old Woolworths, a really old store going back, I think the 1900s. So it was still around, not too much longer when I was a kid, but it was still around, and it was on the way to school, and at the time Star Wars was the big thing. And Star Wars figures, and like most kids, I was obsessed with the movies, obsessed with the toys. And my parents grew up in the Great Depression, so they certainly didn't believe in spoiling, and you know, I'm very grateful they didn't. But there was no money or allowance or any way really to get to at least from my perception back then, to get these. You know, they only came on birthdays and Christmas. So anyways, long story short, justifying why I did it. See what we do, we justify. But anyways, so this store, where they had, for the time period, the security was, they were on top of it. What they had was a whole floor, department store, and then up top, about halfway, was a second floor with a big window, and it was a security booth. So you could see, if you looked up, you see this big long window with security guys in there. And the store was rigged up with reflective mirrors on all the posts in the aisles and on the walls everywhere. So basically, what I observed immediately was that, well, first I observed where the Star Wars toys were in the toy department. Then I observed, by scoping out for days, how their system worked and how they used the mirrors. They sat up in the window and used the mirrors at the time. This was quite, several decades ago. But it worked for them, and so what I basically did was just paid attention to what people were doing and the routines and where everything was set up, and then I just went in really quick runs with a duffel bag, and I would use the mirrors against them. I would see what they were doing at all times, where all the clerks were and the security guards were, and then I would walk down the aisle, and I wouldn't even drop my bag, but I would already have it open, and I would just quickly look, see where everybody was, and then just tap the toy down and into the bag, and off I went. So, devious little bugger, eh? Anyways, so that was one of the big scores, and I kept hitting it so often that within a week or two, they actually took all the Star Wars toys and moved them up to the front counter. Where the cashiers. Very unusual. I know I sound very proud of myself right now, but I guess I am proud a little bit just of my cleverness. But big deal. It doesn't really take. Humans can be sneaky. It's not a high form of intelligence. But it is funny how sneaky we can get. But anyway, so that was the big score, and so then after that I toned it down. But here's what the story I really want to tell you. That was a background in this year. So basically, I knew I was really good at it, and obviously I was taking some kind of pride in a little bit of how clever I was. Whatever the human ego was. And so basically I toned it down after that, and I stumbled on a variety store close to my school, and there was an old lady there. The parents owned it, or I should say her son owned it, but they had to work, so they put the grandmother, who was in her 80s, in charge, but she was really foggy because of her age, but she was so sweet, she reminded me of my grandmother. So here's my shame and guilt story. So it wasn't the Star Wars figures, but well, it was, but this is the real part of the story I wanted to share, where my realization came in at a young age and my path changed. So I started talking to this sweet old lady, and she, like I said, reminded me of my grandmother, and she was wonderful. And of course, hanging out with her before and after school long enough, and just sitting there realizing how foggy she was and sitting around all these goodies, the temptation finally came, and I realized how easy it would be to take something, so I did. And then it became a routine. Now, I really did enjoy her company. She was such a wonderful lady. She'd tell me stories, and we'd sit for hours, and it was just wonderful. But while this was going on, something else was going on too, and I was steadily taking things, treats and stuff. So this went on and for a little while, and of course something started to not feel right, our little inner gauge. But I hadn't really processed it through, and I was just a kid, so. But something was there, and then I came one day after school and caught the end of a really hard to witness scene where the son, who wasn't, he meant well, but he was just really stressed with his long hours of work and finding that the store had been robbed and that they were missing lots of stuff, and basically he was yelling at his mother. And she was crying. This lady in her 80s. So when I saw that, that was it. The universe gave me what I needed at an early age, and I knew from that point on I wasn't going to take from people ever again. I wasn't going to steal. I wasn't going to be dishonest. And it really broke my heart to see that I had created that, or I'd been a part of that. And so I never stole again. Not a single thing. Yeah, but 6 or 7 years old. But of course, shame and guilt is what I immediately felt rushing in. And then I processed it, but it was so strong. It didn't. Sometimes it takes some processing. Sometimes it takes years. That's an extreme where it was just, wow, that's it. This is it. It didn't even take a lot of processing. But still, shame and guilt for what I had created. And for, letting myself down and, who knows, it was such a long time ago. It's a very foggy memory now, but probably feeling I let my dad down or my family down, or who knows. But it's natural, we go through these things. But what we can see them as is pointers. We often see them, and they become chains. Oh, let me finish that story. So, so I decided I was never going to steal again. And then, perhaps at the beginning, guilt, who knows, again, foggy memory. But I decided to really help this old lady. So I really did enjoy hanging out with her and continued to, and we became really close. But I also helped her any way I could. And I'm sure it probably started with guilt. But then I started to feel the feeling you get from service. Started to feel it felt right helping somebody. Even I had forgiven myself, and it still felt good. And so yeah, wonderful gifts from that experience. So that's that story. Let's go back to generally shame and guilt. So I see them as pointers. Experiences that we attract so that we can learn something from it, or experience something from it, or go through something. And again, it might be something immediate, it might be something down the road, a piece to a puzzle, as it were. So really it comes down to choice though, and you'll make the choice when it feels right. So don't even pressure yourself, you can't make a mistake. But with shame and guilt, when it feels right and you know it's right, you'll start to let go, truly let go. Because really all they are is illusions. It's the past, it's gone. So it doesn't exist. And they're chains, they're heavy chains, and we forged them. Yes, the system and other people often do their little part, but it's only our attention to what they said and holding on to it, or what they did. Not letting go of it. We still forged it. So we forged the chains and we keep adding to them. And they bind us, obviously. And we can let go of them at any time. We don't have to keep adding, and we don't have to hold on to them, because we're the ones holding on to those chains. The chains aren't holding on to us. We're holding on to the chains. Shame and guilt, you're a human being. You do things. There's not anything you could have possibly done to feel guilty about that one or millions of humans haven't done. We've done it all. Things that are so horrific you can't even imagine. So whatever you've done, it's most likely not original. My only point to that is saying that, you're human. So don't feel like you're so terrible like nobody else for whatever it is, because no. And most of the times it's not for big things anyways. We feel shame and guilt for little things that a million people have gone through. So it's okay, join the club. It's part of the experience. So we can shape ourselves and shape our experience and beliefs and shape everything. So whatever you're holding on to, of course it serves you to let it go sooner than later. But you'll know when it feels right. But it doesn't really serve us except as pointers, and that's how I see them, as pointers, so we can grow and we can see things. That's what shame and guilt, they serve a purpose as pointers, so we can figure out what kind of people we want to be and what we don't want to be, and what we want to do and what we don't want to do. So try not to see them as chains, first of all. If it feels like chains, fine, let go of the chains and start to see them as pointers. Consciousness separating itself into trillions of pieces so it can discover itself, so it can explore itself and rediscover itself and return to itself. So this is part of it too. Putting little obstacles, putting little challenges, putting little situations in our own lives. But they don't have to chain us down. And they shouldn't. Why would you want to be chained down? Why would you want to feel shame and guilt? You're amazing. You're amazing. We often not only miss the now, miss the moments, miss the gifts that are just endless, but even within ourselves, we get that old human amnesia and we forget just how amazing we are, how amazing you are. Your amazingness, if you really step into stillness, if you really embrace self-love, it always comes down to self-love, you will start to see just how amazing all this is and how amazing you are. And your amazingness far, 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 far surpasses any of the shadows or shame or guilt. So love yourself, forgive yourself. And when you're ready, you'll make the choice and you'll do that, and you'll let go of the chains and you'll be so much lighter. So, yeah. Shame or guilt. Very normal, but you don't need them. You can fly much better without them. So thank you for your question.